Good evening, folks. Thanks for coming. Hopefully the words that I speak tonight are for God and that it can reach out to somebody. I'm going to talk about sports and how the way I prepared for this was how I became a Christian 4 years ago, and then what it was like being a non-Christian athlete. So sports for me, when I was growing up, it was everything. I mean, if I could beat you at it, I would play it. And winning was the only goal. It wasn't making friends. It wasn't to be a better teammate. I just wanted to beat you. Badminton tournament in PE class, if you were a girl, sorry, I'm gonna beat you. So as I was preparing for this, I kind of chuckled because I remember at 10, I said to myself, at 40 years old, I'm gonna retire. And then 5 years later, I'll be giving my Hall of Fame speech in front of a group of people. Well, here I am, 45, talking to a group of people. So this is my so-called Hall of Fame speech. So tonight I'm going to talk about the good and bad of what we can bring from sports. I'm going to start off with the bad. Growing up, like I said, sports was everything for me. So much so that it doesn't matter what it took to win, I would do my darndest to do it. And it was, as reflecting as a Christian now, it was almost to the point of grossness, because I idolized sports so much that I would do anything for it. People would think maybe I was a good teammate, but I probably wasn't. Because if you played the position I did, I was going to do everything I could to not let you get my spot. I wasn't going to encourage you to make you a better player. I was all worried about myself. And that's the way I attacked sports my whole life. I didn't have a sports mentor when I grew up. I'm pretty sure I was the first athlete of my family. I didn't know uncles that played. My dad didn't play. I think he played on a work softball team. My brothers really weren't into sports, but when they did play, I would dominate them so bad that they would go cry. I would get in trouble, and then I'm back out on the court or the field playing by myself again. And growing up, we weren't Christians. I knew of God, I didn't know God. I knew he got nailed to a cross. And when I heard he is risen, I knew I was getting candy that day. But once I started playing sports, I became real good at it real fast. And I was usually the number 1 or 2 player on the team growing up. And so once I started getting the admiration from family members, fans, I ate it up. And we had newspapers back then. And after every game, if you did good, your name was in that newspaper. So that it made it even worse for me. I was seeking the admiration. I was full of pridefulness, which if we read in Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. I was so full of pride, and what it did was lead into more sin of my life. Or Proverbs 11:2, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, Without humility comes wisdom. I was not a humble athlete. I was a very prideful athlete. I played for the wrong reasons. But I didn't know any better. Like I said, I knew of Christ. I did not know Christ. But when I became a Christian 3 or 4 years ago, and then I can reflect back on my being a non-Christian athlete, I knew I did everything wrong as an athlete. I was chasing and chasing and chasing, and I never had the fulfillment. Tim Tebow was probably the first Christian athlete that I knew of. He became famous when he went to the national championship. He wore John 3:16 under his eye. But before that game, in the games leading up to that one, he had Philippians 4:13 under his eye. And I'm going to read from that. So in Philippians 4:13, it says, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. But if I go back verses 10 through 12, it says, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. And when I was reading the verses 10 through 12, I reflect back on sports, and what I get from 10 through 12 is contentment. And I did not get that from sports. I never found contentment until I gave my life to Christ. You see, I would chase that award, that trophy, my name in the newspaper, and then I'd get it, and then I'm on to the next award, the next trophy, the next newspaper clipping. But it was not until I was saved almost 4 years ago that I felt true contentment in my life. Like I said, when I was growing up, I did not know Christ. I knew of Christ. I had teammates that were Christians. I didn't know the Lord's Prayer until I was 15 years old, and I'm sitting in a locker room and we're saying it. The words are coming out of my mouth, and I'm really concerned if I'm praying to God that I could drop 20 points on this kid tonight. My prayers were not sincere. But yet I had teammates that were Christians. They had opportunities to speak the gospel into me. I had coaches that were Christians. They had an opportunity. As Christians, we are called to share the gospel. As a teammate, we are called to share the gospel, especially for somebody who's never heard it before. I wasn't raised in a church. We weren't raised in a church. We were taught by our dad to be prideful. Maybe he didn't teach us to be prideful, but he taught us to take pride in what we did, and then I probably took it to the extreme. That's the way I was as an athlete. There's a lot of good we can take from being an athlete. teamwork, taking care of our body. Remember, our body is our temple. So my freshman year, I go into the basketball season. My goal is to make varsity. That year, I'm good enough, I get to dress varsity. Sophomore year, same goal. Make varsity, get to dress varsity. It wasn't until my junior year, the summer of my junior, going into before school started, we're in a basketball camp. And I knew going into that camp that I was probably going to be a starter. So my goal was just, I was on the cusp of my goal. We're in the gym one Saturday. We're getting prepared. The summer camp. I go in for a layup. Another player comes to block. I go to the ground. They look down at me and they said, "Don't look down, don't get up." I fully dislocated my right knee. It's hanging to the side. I'm trying to figure out what am I gonna do next. Ambulance shows up, they take me to the hospital. So after that happened, I knew that my goal was gonna change. Things were gonna be different. Luckily, I had a coach. He told us that year, if you play your role, we will win. Pretty simple. So I already knew my role had changed. I'll be coming off the bench if I can get back to playing again. So I rehab. Get back on the team, play a few games, partially dislocated a couple more times, but I keep playing. That year was 97, 98. We ended up going to the state. We had a good, strong run that year in basketball. I think we won 25 games. First time that ever happened. First team to ever make state for boys basketball. And we had a good group of core guys. We had a scorer. We had a guy who could pass the ball. We had a guy who could rebound. But if they had an off night, any one of them, there was 5 other guys on the bench that could come in and just fill that just a little bit. So if they averaged 20, they only get 10 that night, 14 that night. There's a guy that can come off the bench and get the other 6 for the team. And that's what it took to make our such deep run to state. I'll never forget that year. They shut down the city of a bus. I'm in the Mizzou Arena, and it's nothing but white and green, just cheering for us. I'll never forget it. But I'll never forget, now that I'm a Christian, my coach telling me, our team, we play our role. We will win, we will be fine. That's the same way we can attack as we're being a Christian. If we play our role, no matter how big or small, we can help walk along someone to Christ. Now, I'm not saying you need to be a preacher, a ministry leader. In fact, to me, the most important thing to me is the greeter at the front door. They're the first person that you see when you walk in here. And I remember that because for me, it was Miss Judy. So that's 4 years ago, we started coming to church. My daughter gets invited to VBS. Tammy, this is your plug. When is it this year?
That would be July.
But it's a great program for the kids. But because of Tammy and Sarah and all the volunteers that put in all the hard work for VBS, my daughter shows up here. She's invited, falls in love with it, comes back home, tells my wife. Wife comes to church. And at that time, my wife we were struggling with her mom. She had cancer. She later died that year. But I remember having conversations with my wife of, there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be something greater that we're missing. So since my daughter comes to VBS, she comes home, my wife starts coming to church. My wife falls in love with church. My wife comes home. Hey, Brian. Hey, Warren. You guys should come to church. You're really going to like it. And I was always a guy that if you told me to walk into a church, they're going to light me on fire. I'm going to catch on fire. So I remember the first day I walk in, and it's Miss Judy. She comes up to me. Well, hello, Brian. Finally nice to meet you. And I'm thinking to myself, how does she know my name? I didn't know she was already been talking to my wife. But she played a role. And it was probably the biggest role for me, because I'm a people person, and she came up to me with just a hello. And to me, it was like her telling me, well, hello, I love you. And then we have members like Nate and Katie Bloss pouring into my son or daughter. They were playing their role. We have James and Tammy pouring into my son, playing a role. And the roles they play lead me and my family to Christ. If they're not there playing their roles, I'm not saved, my family's not saved. If I don't hear a sermon by Nate Bloss on how to be a better husband, a better father, I'm not saved. If I don't have people like Alan and Sharon pouring into me and my wife, I might be somewhere else different today. Because I can tell you right now, that day when Judy said hello, my plan was I was going to walk in here, make my wife happy, and I wasn't coming back. As far as the young athletes that we have in here, you should use every opportunity to spread the gospel to your teammates, because you never know. They may brush you off, but you planted that seed. So as a church, we're called to serve, right? And we have plenty of opportunities to do it. You can be security, you can be a cart driver, you can be a greeter, you can be a youth leader. But all things points to Christ. Because my biggest fear is when I stand before and I'm judged by God, I don't want him to say, I never knew you, leave me. Because I didn't serve, I didn't walk with someone, I didn't share the gospel. I didn't know what the gospel was when I was little. We didn't know the gospel. But we are called to share it in any way possible. And so, because people played their role and served in the church, myself and my family have been saved, and I'll be forever indebted. Thank you.